hey, California's dreaming, baby, on such a winter's day. Yeah, California's dreaming, baby, California's dreaming, baby, California's dreaming.
We welcome to the show Winston Francis. Hello, Winston.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Not too bad. How about you?
Oh, fantastic. The sun is shining, man. It makes everything a bit of difference.
Is it really?
Oh, it's fantastic when the sun is shining.
Oh, it always is. It's not shining here, though.
No. I mean, today, it's so nice to have the sun come out.
Oh, earlier,
I was up from early this morning, and, it's great.
Oh, yeah, it's always great when the sun's out. And music always sounds better in the sun, doesn't it?
It does.
Always, especially reggae.
Absolutely.
You did really well with California Dreamin' in the 70s. It was also featured on Tony Blackburn's Radio 1 show. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I think it was the very first time that Tony made his record of the week twice, because it's on record saying that when it was first released, he made his record of the week, and the story goes that when the BBC should have started, touting it, they were told that they couldn't get enough records to put into the shops. So Tony made his record of the week a second time, and that is the first time he did that and the very last time.
So that must have been great.
Yeah, it was great for me. It was wonderful. But like everything else, what really happened is that I guess that the guy who released the record up, in England, he sold about between 20 and 30,000 copies, and he didn't want the guys in Jamaica to know. So he said, the stumper was broken. So, he couldn't trust the records. I mean, he was trying to, shift a penny, and instead of gaining a pound, so it was bad for the record company, bad for me, because from what we were told, the record was going straight into the charts. But you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, how did that feel at that time? It must have been, heartbreaking, really, because you hear your song on Tony Blackburn's show twice, and then, Well, it did a great job for me because, I was signed to a very good company, which was, the company was called MAM, which was the biggest company in the UK for doing tours and all that. And I did, I toured the Bailey circuit twice, and at that time the biggest thing was the Bailey circuit. I understand that there was a guy called Huey Green, and if you won, on his, I think it was Opportunity Knox, the top prize was to get a contract to work with the Bailey circuit. And I didn't do anything, and I did that twice. So for me, that was, a huge feather in my cap. And I was introduced to quite a lot of people, so, it was great. Yeah, and you recently performed at the Notting Hill Carnival. What was that like?
Fantastic. I keep saying fantastic because, believe me, it was. There were people as far as your eyes could see, and everybody was jumping. It was totally. I still, even today, I got a couple of hits on my page saying people talking about the carnival, and a couple of guys called me from Hong Kong and said they saw it online, and they were so sorry that they weren't here.
They couldn't.
But they're going to make sure next year that they will be here.
And you'll be there as well, probably.
Yes. Because the guys asked me if I could come back next year. And I told him yes, because the vibe was so great. And it's so good to see people really enjoying themselves. And they were singing all the songs, so it was fantastic.
And it's such a great experience, isn't it, the Notting Hill Carnival?
It is. And from what Gaz told me, he said, the promoters were scared
that there were going to be trouble this year because of the riots that happened a couple of months before. But they, were insistent that, they went ahead with the carnival. And he said this year was one of the most peaceful. So, we are glad, that it went like that.
Yeah, and everybody had a great time, and that's what you want, really, isn't it?
Sure. And I thoroughly enjoyed myself, And the band that I was working with, a band from Southend called the Gold Masters, they were excellent. I think it's one of the best reggae ska bands in the country.
Yeah, I actually saw the video on the Originals fan page, which we'll talk about later.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a great video if the listeners want to check it out. Yeah, if you type in the Originals on Facebook, it'll take you to the page, and then if you go down a bit, it's on there.
Fantastic.
Your performance at the Notting Hill Carnival, and yeah.
Great.
Looks great.
Thanks.
So, you have a new album out, don't you?
Yes, I've got two albums out at the moment. I've got one called Feel Good All Over, and that was produced by a guy called Tony Ruffcut, and it's a medley of songs, 31 songs, and most of them are covers. But it's once you put the album on, you just can't take it off. And the good thing about this album, they're all individual tracks, but they were put together, and to make up a medley. And it's really, really, really great medley, because a lot of people tell me that the minute they put it into their cars, they can't take it out again. You just keep bobbing your head away and you keep dancing and singing the songs.
So it's one of them albums you put on and then you want to put it on again. Right.
And the other one is one which was released last November, and it's called Special Someone, and that was produced by Bill Campbell. And it's a really, really beautiful album, really nice album. I got a call on Thursday from New York, because the guy sent out 500. Bill sent out 500 to the States 3 months ago, and the guy was asking if he could have another 500. And as you know, CDs are not really selling today. So to sell 1,000 CDs, in 3 months in New York is really, really a great feat.
Yeah,
so we are happy, that the album is going so well.
And they know their music, don't they, in America? They really do.
Oh yeah. But I tell you, and this is the honest truth. I was in a record shop last year in New York. The shop is called Keelan Beckford's record shop. And while I was standing in there, he said to me, "Why aren't you guys, sending out, much more music than you're doing at the moment?" I said, "From where?" He says, "From England." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Because the Americans prefer the English reggae to even the Jamaican reggae." And I said, "You're crazy." And a woman came in and she said, "Anything new from England?" And he said, "No, but here's one of the Englishmen. You talk to him." And she said, "Oh, the English music is much better." And I was flabbergasted, but I'm telling you the truth.
Nice to know.
If you speak to these guys, they'll tell you that they prefer the English type reggae in the States more than they do the ones from Jamaica.
Interesting.
Well, reggae has come a long way, and the people who are producing the music have come a long way. But believe it or not, you have some of the best reggae bands in the world on the continent. I've heard reggae bands in. I remember I was doing a tour in Japan, and Alton and I were doing this tour, and we were in this arena, and we were, I think, on the 5th floor of the arena in our dressing rooms, and there's a thing that they call specials, and the Japanese were asking Alton and me to do some specials for them, and we heard, we heard Ken Booth, doing a voice check, a sound check, downstairs. And Alton turned to me and he says, "I didn't know Ken was here." And I said,
No, you know, I did myself, and we both ran downstairs, you know. And when we got to side stage and look, it was a Japanese guy who was singing, and he sounded just like Ken Booth, and the band sounded just like, you know, Ken's band.
Really?
We were shocked. So, you know, after we watched him for a few minutes, you know, we went back upstairs, and then after that, you know, about 20 minutes later, we heard another voice, and that was of Delroy Wilson. And and Alton turned to me and said, "No, Delroy is dead. It can't be him." You know, so it's crazy. But they imitate you so well.
Yeah.
You know, that you just can't believe it. But these guys, they sound so good, man. You know, the Japanese, you've got some really brilliant German bands. You know, I've worked with a Dutch band called Rudrich and the High Notes. The drummer is one of the best drummers I've heard, believe me. And this guy is Dutch. And most of the band, you know, the whole band, you know, they're really, really, really tight. And they play some of the best reggae I know. And a lot of Jamaican artists who come from Jamaica to work on the continent, they always ask to work with Rudrich, because the band is so tight.
Hmm. Well, it's great to know that there's so many great bands out there, great reggae bands in Europe. You know?
Yep, believe me, they are.
Yeah.
There's also a Spanish band, you know, with a guy. He sounds just like Ernest Ranglin, you know, and they play really, really beautiful reggae.
It's amazing when they can imitate the best singers, isn't it? And you think, well, how can you sound, you know, nearly as good? You know, it's like.
Well, they do. They honestly do, especially the Japanese.
Mm.
You know how they do it, heavens knows, but they really sound good.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard guys imitating me, and
and you're like, you can't believe it. You're also involved in the originals. What's that all about for the people who don't know?
Well, a friend of mine, Tony Washington, he was one of the guys who actually produced the Millie Small My Boy Lollipop track for Island Records, and he was one of the keyboard players. And he called me one day, this was about a year ago, and he said, you know, Winston, I was talking to Chris Blackwell, that is, and he said I told him that I had an idea, was to do a documentary and on some of the first singers, you know, musicians that came to England from Jamaica and the West Indies, you know. And Chris said, yeah, you know, that's a very good idea, because a lot of the guys are, you know, are dropping out. You know, so many artists have passed away in the past 10 years, you know. And so the idea came up, and we started talking about it. And Chris said, you guys better get on with it. And then I was talking to Philip Chen, who was actually here in England on a short vacation. Because he's now, Philip Chen is the bass player for The Doors. You know the group The Doors?
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah.
Right. Well, he's now the bass player for The Doors. But he came up with Jimmy James and the Vagabond in the late 50s, 60s.
Mm.
You know, and, you know, we were having a good laugh and, you know, talking about how, you know, when they first came here, you know, and they were playing the Skinheads, you know, adopted them as you know, as you know, their leaders in music, you know, and you know, Jimmy James and the Vagabond toured England extensively, you know, and so did Rico Rodriguez, you know, because Rico Rodriguez is he looks like he's a Syrian, you know, but he's a Jamaican born and bred. But because of his race, you know, he looks European, and he looks he is Caucasian, but born in Jamaica, and because of his religion, being a Rastafarian, you know, he grew his hair very long. So a lot of the guys in the West End used to, when they came to see him play, they copied him in growing their hair long, you know. And this is how, you know, the Beatles thing came about with the guys growing their hair long.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
You
that happens with great music, doesn't it? It's not
Yes,
it's not just about the music. It's about what you wear, how you
The
look,
image, you know.
and how you are.
Yes, and you know, I was talking to Rico one day, and he's such a humble person. You know, I was talking to him one day, you know, and I said, well, you know, Rico, you can say that you are the one who started this music revolution with all this long hair, with the Beatles and all this. And he just smiled and said, well, you know, Winston, you do what you have to do. You know, he's such a humble person. You know, he was given MBE by the Queen, you know, a couple of years ago, and nobody knows about it because he doesn't tell anyone.
Doesn't he? Oh.
Yeah,
you think he would? Yeah.
And I said, Rico, what, you should be proud. You know, you're the first Jamaican to get an MBE, you know, from the Queen. And he says, no big deal, bro. It's no big deal. You know, it's not really for me. It's for, you know, all of Jamaica. You know, and I said, yeah, but Jamaica doesn't know about it. So you got to tell them, you know. But he's such an humble guy. You know, it's such a lovely human being. It's such a lovely person.
Well, if we get him on the show, we'll say, Rico Rodriguez, MBE.
Right.
And then he'll be like, no, but yeah.
That'd be great. That would be great.
All right then, Winston. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show, and send me a new album, and I'll get it on.
Well, thank you very much, and I'll send it to you. Because the reason why I when we talked before, I said I was going to send it. I've been so busy because I'm preparing to do a tour in Argentina on the 9th, starting the 8th of next month. So, and it's with a 48-piece orchestra.
Great.
So it's going to be, you know, a big deal. So, you know,
Is that in Buenos Aires or?
Buenos Aires, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be all over in Argentina, but we're starting in Buenos Aires.
Great.
But, you know, I'm inundated with work. I was working last night in a little club in Camden called the Dublin Castle. Fantastic night it was. With the same band, you know, the Gold Masters, you know. But I've got so much work on at the moment that, believe me, you know, I did, you know. I, as a matter of fact, I put the CDs in an envelope and had it ready for you, but I just didn't get the chance to go to the post office.
That's fine, no worries.
But I'll send it off to you, that's for sure.
Great. All right then, thanks a lot for coming on the show, Winston.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much, and you know, thanks to everyone for listening. You know, and you all have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Whoa, whoa, yeah. I look at you, you look at me. You tell me you ain't feeling butterfly. It's obvious, there's some chemistry. I know it feels so right. Well, I wanted so long to know. Now you're telling me you gotta let it go. Tell me I have to start all over again. I never thought this day would come. This is something that I wanted in my life. I realized that you're the one telling me it's time to say goodbye. What's in my heart ain't gonna change, so it shouldn't be so easy to walk away. I feel it, let's not pretend. Baby, I know what love is. Maybe I'm a fool. I just know what I'm feeling, and it's all because of you. Don't tell me I don't know, I want the truth. 'Cause they call it, we call it, you call it, I call it love. It's so clear for you to see. Don't let nobody tell you what to do. Why they can't just let us be happy?